Good day, everybody, and the follow-up video that I had promised. And for here, I'm doing this from on-site as well, only I won't be really moving from this spot. I'm in the garden maze in front of the Furry Museum this time. As alluded to in the last video, we're going to talk about a situation that happened with the creator of this fine establishment. And an issue I think is a big lesson to a lot of furries out there. Because being creative can be a lonely endeavor. We have a larging and burgeoning community on the internet, but other than random gatherings and, collecting all of ourselves into one spot, it makes it difficult to socialize and feel like, sometimes that our works are appreciated. And unfortunately, for most of us, we're pretty quiet and reserved, so when we appreciate something, we may not verbally say it as we should, or maybe even if we do, it feels like it falls on deaf ears, and sometimes history itself can sometimes feel like it falls on deaf ears. But there's something that you have to be really careful about. There are people out there who have a fetishism for history. Particular individuals who I've covered on this channel previously. And those individuals will try to take advantage of other people's hard work and try to claim it as their own. A lot of those folks on the internet, some may call them incelious, right? We'll talk about the history of Western civilization and how great it was, and they'll use an example of like a Parthenon or some sort of Greek architecture, not realizing that it wasn't the great Socrates or Aristotle that created that architecture, even though those were the philosophers of the time. The philosopher of the times merely sought shelter under that Parthenon. The Parthenon was built by Greek architects. And some of them famous, some of them not really well known, but even the most famous architect can only create blueprints and manage a project. They cannot. It requires a community of people to create the structure itself. And a lot of conflicts about society is, people on high taking credit for the hard work of people who are not appreciated all that much. History is full of situations like that. And having history, having appreciation for individuals who find a foundation and provide that foundation is important. But it's important to understand that it takes the community being brave in and of itself, not just one person. Even if that one person happened to be at the right place at the right time and created a community in the right place at the right time, it doesn't mean that you should praise them as a god or a deity, which may seem ironic given the last video, but I think that that's an important thing to state. You are a furry community, and you're just as important as Mark Merlanio or Rod O'Reilly or Tantra McNally or Salato or Dog Patch or any person. Your art is the reason we're here. Your creativity is the reason we're here. Your strive to do better for your community is the reason that your community will survive. And whether or not you raise your own child or act as a steward towards the children of others to make a better society, I think that's what's the most important thing here. Sometimes we get enamored with trying to take on more than we can chew. And in my age and in growing up, I realized that sometimes it's okay to say no, and sometimes it's okay that, the frequency of posts or videos or written works at Flera or anything like that it's okay that if I'm not writing as much as I think I should, because I'm providing a service to society that I also think is important even in my paying job. And everybody struggles to balance these lives. So it's important that when you have something good and you have something great and you have something going for you, that you be very cautious about falling into endeavors that are impossible. In fact, may sully those other works that you do. As you gain renown and stature, people are going to be more than happy to have you take on more work for them, but you have to understand, is that value of the work worth it? This is a video talking about Sotalis going into the Garden State for the weekend, and an unfortunate situation that he found himself in, taking on a PR job that was doomed from the start. For those of you who don't know, for the weekend, Garden State for the weekend is a convention currently going on in New Jersey. Now, New Jersey has had issues with furry conventions and retaining them in the past. Fur Affinity United used to be a New Jersey furry convention until either finances or some other situation or proximity to the founder, who moved probably out of New Jersey into Virginia. The founder moved the convention closer to where they resided instead of from their home state. I believe that was one of the primary reasons. Dragoneer had moved from New Jersey to Virginia. And so they had moved Fur Affinity United from New Jersey to Virginia, like right next door to Furthermore, who had moved from Maryland to Virginia. More likely Crystal City, which is near the Washington, D.C. area. But Fur Affinity United moved pretty, like within 15 minutes of there. So you had conventions that were pretty close in proximity, and New Jersey was left out to dry. In that hole was Garden State for the Wind. One of the founders of Garden State for the Wind was a person named Dashing Fox. Now, if you are an old person on this channel, you remember that I did talk to that individual on his channel. I did an interview with him back in the past. Now, he also did interviews with other people, and one of those other people that Dashing did an interview with was the nefarious, infamous group called the Furry Raiders. Once again, if you're an older person of the channel, you know who that group is. We've done videos we did videos back in 2017 when their actions basically was the nail in the coffin for Rocky Mountain FurCon, and interestingly was the entrance of one Boozy Badger, a furry lawyer that is well known in the fandom as well. So the past coming to the present, Dashing, because of that, that ties with that organization. Other people had other evidence that, he might be more cozy with that organization than most furries are comfortable with, because that organization has tied itself with the ideas and the proclamations of fascist symbology, such as the armbands that we talked about. So because of that nefarious reception, and him seeming to cozy up with ne'er-do-wells, it became, Dogpatch definitely covered it, and the situations that tied Garden State for the weekend with those elements. Now, one could say, well, just because somebody did a video with somebody doesn't necessarily mean that they hold their ideologies, and that is something that Dashing and other people have said. Another person who was guest of honor this year also did an interview with that group, and basically, not that one, which was Nick the singing dog, who, by the way, has a thing on this in this museum. Has a little panel thing in the top room there. There's a picture of Nick the singing dog. So I'm guessing Sotala knows them from prior. And, Nick had done an interview with the Raiders as well. And that has been utilized as a means of saying that Nick supports the Raiders, because he basically came on their quote unquote podcast and talked with them. So Sotalo trying to defend the Garden State FurCon this year, basically tried to defend Nick, saying that like Nick doesn't promote that group of nefarious furry Nazis. He supports he just did an interview with them. Now, I would argue this. If those two individuals, if Dashing and if Nick, the singing dog, truly don't want to be associated with that organization, then they should publicly ask that organization take those videos down from their podcast. Because, as I said, people, who are content creators who want to contribute to a community sometimes, will take any offer they can because they're desperate to get their name out there. And that desperation, in my mind, is the root of all evil. Some people say money is the root of all evil, but I think desperation is. And I've seen multiple times where the raiders prey upon the desperation of smaller channels and furries who are just getting started in their content creation journey and try to ask them to interview them. And basically, because they themselves are desperate, because they want to be seen as a bastion of good for the community, even though they wear that armband, which everyone has said, it's like, get rid of the armband, and they won't. It's like, oh no, it's just an armband. And it's like, well, it's tied to some pretty problematic issues in history and a group in history. So, putting yourself in that position, you can easily get yourself out of that position if you wanted to. Same with like the Nick and Dashing. Like, ask them to remove those videos and say, hey, if you don't remove those videos, I've made this public statement and I'm gonna be DMing you, like, remove those videos. If you don't remove those videos with our likeness from your channel in X amount of time, then we're going to ask YouTube to remove it because that's our likeness and we have, quote unquote, copyright or rights to our likeness. And we have the right to tell you not to include ourselves on your channel. Even if you stand behind all the words you said to them in that moment, right? Because that organization is a para. You may disagree with that position, but they have done, they've been tied with a lot of failed conventions, and sometimes they had a hand in that failure by taking over leadership and trying to make it into their convention. And a lot of furries were worried that they were trying to do the same thing with Garden State for the win. So going back to the topic at hand and the individual who was brought in to do PR, this was their first year of doing PR. And they might have wanted to bring their, contributions from the virtual world into the real world and really wanted to put their all into it. And they saw this as an opportunity, but they didn't assess the risks. And because they didn't assess the risks, they basically were PRing a failing ship. Now, he gave it his all to the point where he said some problematic things and also some falsities and some both known and maybe unknown falsities. And it tarnished his character in the eyes of people who were concerned, because instead of putting dampers on those concerns that the leadership of For the Win wasn't looking out for the fandom's best interest, it instead was looking out for their own best interest, it made people feel that way even more so. One of the quotes I remember hearing about and seeing said was that Sotalo said something along the lines of, if this furry convention fails, then New Jersey won't be able to have a furry convention in 5 years. So he's worried about the future of the fandom in the state of New Jersey. Now, whether he was told that, I'm going to guess he was told that within that circle, right? That sometime before the convention, he heard the rumors about what was happening at Garden State FurCon. Maybe he got involved with staff. Maybe he got, I don't know how he got recruited, but he somehow was like, oh, this is an opportunity for me to take a convention that's having a hard time and turn it around. But it's hard to turn around. It's hard to float a sinking ship. as it were. It's harder to captain a sinking vessel than to get on a boat that's not likely to sink, right? Like if you're going to be, introduced to the being a big staff member, like doing that in that particular environment is going to be an exceptional challenge. And when you put yourself at risk like that, you have to think about your other reputations and your other things. And you have to kind of measure institution reputation with personal reputation. Public relations is all about that. And sure, the institutions that I have and I'm involved with aren't perfect. Like, I'll come full on circle and say it. Like, FLAIRA as an institution, like, has people who are critics, and particularly critics of individuals on staff. One of the recent ones being Green Reaper. Recently, Green Reaper stated his position on his beliefs about pronouns, as problematic as those beliefs are. And, basically he's like, well, I'm going to say if somebody is biologically male, I'm going to use he, she, or he, him. If someone's biologically female, I don't care what they feel about their own gender. I don't know what it is. I really don't know what it is with English people. Like, as an individual, I'm going to criticize that because it's just dumb. It's like what a person calls themselves is not up to you. Right? If somebody says, call me Bob or call me Tantru McNally instead of call me John Smith, right? Like if a furry if it's like, I go by this name and you go, well, I'm going to call you John Smith, even though you say, call me Tantru, or like if I say, call me first name and you still like call me the full thing, like there's that sort of like, I feel socially obligated versus what an individual asks of me. And like, to me, and furry is a pretty informal place. Like if a person asks you to use a particular pronoun in their presence, it's not a big deal in my mind. And like, it hasn't been a big deal for many years now. So to hear that the individual in question is still holding on to that like thing that was beaten into them in high school, probably about pronouns and their usage and the proper English way of doing it, I've got to say there's something in the water in England. I mean, you got, the politicians there like make American politicians look, it's cheesy. Like there's J.K. Rowling and Green Reaper and I don't know. Now it's like I can talk smack about my boss because, hey, I'm on YouTube now, right? And so I believe that that's why it's important to have an ability to use multiple platforms. I will say, as far as the articles that I publish, I have not felt coerced in any way to edit or retinker those articles based on Green Reaper's thoughts and beliefs. So I still feel that the institution of FLAIRA itself has an important history in the fandom, so I will stick by it and I will continue to work and promote it as an institution. What I won't do is promote Green Reaper's ideology. So it's that kind of like balance that you have to kind of strike when it comes to an institution versus your individual belief systems. And I think that most people who are trans and transgendered would understand that. They're like, yeah, you can't just quit an important job just because your boss is a jerk, because it pays your bills and you are helping other people. And, you're taking your boss's money and you're giving them resources. But in this case, like if Green Reaper were making money off of it, then I might have a little bit more problematics to it. But I know Green Reaper, it's like FLAIRA is a money sink for Green Reaper. So it's not like I'm increasing his power in any way. It's more like I'm maintaining a garden that he, is paying for. So in the end, it's like, that's the weight that I take. Moving back to the topic at hand, I don't think that the individual here took into consideration that Sotalo took into consideration of the problem that he was walking into. Now, right before the convention began on the weekend, you can see here that he said, well, I was not informed by the convention staff that we were unbanning these problematic individuals or people that were, called out as problematic. and that they were welcome to the convention, and like I was misinformed, and I spread that misinformation, so it's like I can't work under these conditions, so I'm going to be resigning as the PR consultant. Now I'm laying to bear that there was I'm kind of, the one might say, well, you're glossing over the fact that he said that he kind of went a little crazy a little bit and trying to perform his duties, and basically laid himself at the feet of the institution to the point where, when his critics were coming around, he was calling them the raiders and them the Nazis and things like that. I would say that he's probably not experienced in dealing with huge social interactions like that. In his own bio, inside, not the middle finger. Why are you doing that? Why? Okay, this hand's working. This hand's not working. I don't know why the middle finger's stuck. It's rude. Anyways, like his little thing inside, his own little self-biography on his own statue in the side there, indicates that he's not good with crowds. He's not good with large groups. So I don't know why he took on PR. I don't know why you would take on PR. If you're not, because PR, you're setting yourself up to deal with a lot of different people with a lot of different ideologies and a lot of different passions. And unfortunately for, Dogpatch is anything but passionate, even to a fault. And sometimes he he's very binary, and like something's good or something's bad. There's no like gray area. To me, the gray area exists, and it's important that you acknowledge the gray area so that you can accentuate a person's weaknesses and acknowledge them so that they can improve themselves to get closer, to move closer to the good side and not to the dark side, right? Because we're all capable of moving from one thing to the other depending on what we're doing. So the person who is running PR during the premiere year, Garden State FurCon is not an institution that it was worth throwing yourself at the feet at. For me, Flera is an institution worth defending. And I had to defend it a lot when I first started writing for it. There was a lot of power players in the fandom who really didn't want Flera to continue to exist. One of them being Zydex. Zydex, I think, gave up on trying to destroy the institution of Flera. He didn't care for Green Reaper, probably because of Green Reaper's beliefs that I just acknowledged earlier, because Zydex is very much a trans right person. I think, Green Reaper edited a wiki in a way that frustrated him, and like he was frustrated that Green Reaper was taking yet another thing about furry history and kind of putting it under his umbrella, where, furry history, like history is not written, like history might be quote unquote written by the winners, but it's like, it's not really. It's people, people communicate history to each other, and we all have a part in our own thoughts on it. And these institutions like this allow for that discussion. I think they're important, which is why I don't think it was worth the risk for trying to do the whole Garden State for the weekend, because it was only a 2-year convention at this point, and it's a shrinking convention apparently, because I heard a number that it was 900 the first year and it's like 350 this year, but like I don't see an official number. The 900 was an official number from 2024. There's an unofficial number going around that it's 350 this year. There was people on the ground saying that the convention attendance had shrunk from year to year, probably due to the controversies, and the controversies existed in 2024 and they only continued into 2025. So as I said, it's a sinking ship, as it were. And as an institution, it's a young institution. And, one of the things that, as I said, was quoted to Soltos, that Sotolo was quoted as saying is like, well, if Garden State Furry Convention falls and it's going to be 5 years until another furry convention shows up to take its place. I think he was saying that because I think that was the delta between Fur Affinity United leaving New Jersey and Garden State FurCon being created. Garden State for the weekend. Because for the weekend was trying to start since 2020, and it took them like that long. It took them probably 5 years between that and that. So there was a 5-year period in there where New Jersey didn't have a furry convention. But that's the thing about history. Just because something happened in history doesn't mean that that's what's happening in the present. And this is the tragic part. And this is another reason why it was not worth the risk and not worth the reputation harm to throw oneself at the feet of Garden State FurCon, or FurCon for the weekend, FTW, which is it's probably going to be an ironic statement in the coming years if it continues going this way. But the fact is that there was another convention, and I think Sotalo failed to realize that. Because I think the reason that Sotalo got so passionate and impassionate is like because he wants furry to be everywhere. He wants furry to grow. He wants it to expand. And he saw, New Jersey furry at risk. But there was another convention. There was one called let me do this in my Midwestern accent. Furgedaboutit. Yeah, that's what it's called. Furgedaboutit. Oh, come on. Come on, you stupid Roo. That's not what it is. You know it's not what it is. Come on. It's Forget About It. Forget about it. So I learned after this weekend. So to be fair to Sotalo, I didn't know about this until after the weekend either. There was a rival convention, and they chose a phoenix as their sort of thing, which a phoenix has certain symbologies about it. It means that rising from the ashes. So there was probably staff who realized that Garden State was a sinking ship, and others that realized that Garden State was a sinking ship. And so instead of trying to save the sinking ship, they created their own ship and had it on the same weekend as Forget About It, which is probably a big reason why, while people are like, well, they're probably just making up negative numbers, to say it's like 350 for the weekend. This is a big reason why I would absolutely believe that, the numbers could be going down for Garden State, is because this was held on the same weekend. And, and I think it did rather well for itself based on the pictures and photographs that I've seen from both conventions. I think one of the biggest things and the most interesting thing is that while a lot of people have said a lot of negative things about, Garden State and a lot of politicos / nonfiction writers, Dogpatch and, that group, what spoke more loudly to me than any of all that, about the success of Forget About It and the fact that Garden State is probably a dying convention is the fact is one photo and one photo only that kind of screams from the rooftops, the situation here. And I'm going to show that one photo to you right now. Or did I put it in here? Did I not put it in here? I'm going to have to put it in here live. Oh no. Okay, I'm going to have to put it in here live. It's Fender. Like, there was a picture of Fender in front of a Volkswagen. I'll try to get it on here while I'm dorking around here. Let's see. But basically, the reason that that's a big deal, I do it live. I'm editing this live. All right, here, ready? But anyways, yes, I have the picture. I just don't have it rigged up yet. This is the photo. This is why I need a staff. This is why I need a staff. Is because I'm messing it up. is this here. This picture. The reason this picture speaks more volumes than the thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of words exchanged between the PR director of Garden State and Dogpatch and, individual worried mind like furries. This picture speaks volumes. And the reason it speaks volumes is that Fender was at Furgedaboutit is because Fender is played by one Cooper Tom. You know who Cooper Tom was? Cooper Tom was the guest of honor at the premiere Garden State for the weekend. Yes, right. Last year, this guy was the guest of honor at the rival convention that's happening on the same weekend. And the reason that speaks higher, more than any hours of video that I can make and more than anything that Dogpatch can print, is because Cooper Tom is not a politico. They are not. They are a person who enjoys costuming and is a down-to-earth, earth-of-the-ground furry, and likes old technology and very eccentric, it's a big deal. And the fact that the guest of honor from last year goes, well, I'm not going to that convention that made me guest of honor this year. I'm going to this other place in my state, and I'm going to help that convention out. Speaks volumes. I mean, was their guest of honor experience really that bad last year? Did they feel used? Did they feel like they were being utilized to try to prop up a convention that didn't have the fandom's best interest at heart? Or maybe it's just something as simple as Cooper Tom's friends were all going to this other place instead of that convention, so he decided to go to that one instead. It could be anything, but to me, it's a big deal. And to me, that's why Furgedaboutit is probably going to be the future convention in New Jersey, is because, interestingly enough, Sotalo didn't do a good job, not sinking the ship. But Sotalo shouldn't feel like they failed, because that convention was destined for failure. It was moving towards the glacier. And you can be whatever kind of captain you want, but as soon as that boat hits a glacier, sure, you go down with the ship, but is the ship worth going down for? If you have enough escape routes and enough things, then you don't have to go down with the ship. If you have enough escape boats, the captain can, escape with the crew and the passengers. But obviously, the PR person is not supposed to go down with the ship. That's what the convention chair is for. That's what the other people on the board are for. The PR person, yes, it's supposed to help promote the convention and smooth out some of the edges, but you don't have to fall on your sword, especially if the convention already has a history of issues and those people who had issues with it in the past are just expressing their issues in the present. You don't have to. You could say, well, we're trying to change and trying to do better, and we hope that we are, and we hope that we convince you that we are. It's not up for me. I'm not going to change your mind on social media. Understanding that, right? But in the first place, you shouldn't have gone. Do research about the environment you're moving into. Some of the critiques of Solotok point out that they're from Florida. He's from Florida. He's not from New Jersey. So they brought staff in from a different place in a different region, so it felt like an outsider sort of things. And that's sort of an interesting thing about furry, is that there's this push towards regionalism. Just because the staff's coming from some other place doesn't really make a difference, except for if the person doesn't like the convention or doesn't want to see that the convention's doing the best for the locals in mind. Ironically, I think that that's not the case with the Sotalo here. I think that they were. I think it's sort of a little bit. They had a little bit of an ego. They bit off more than they could chew. I mean, they're an alligator / crocodile. They're known for trying to bite more than, trying to bite something big, and with varying degrees of success. But at the end of the day, similar to I've made mistakes during my, career. I went over one in video in February 2021 if you want to go back and look at that. But most people have forgotten about that. Why? Because I addressed the issue. I said what went wrong and what I plan to do in the future. And I think Sotalo should do the same. I think that he should look a little bit and reflect upon reflect upon this failure. Go like, how could I have prevented it from happening in the first place? Do I be a little bit more guarded about jumping in and helping a sinking ship? If I think it's a sinking ship, should I say no more often? Should I focus on the communities and things that bring people joy and bring quality quality world to people, and bring information and good information to people, rather, work from the things I'm strong at rather than trying to work from a place of weakness, because there's somebody else out there who could have taken that PR job, and they either would have botched it just as hard, but they wouldn't have put at risk people's feelings about an institution that was created, or a VR place that was created as a result, or the person would have been, more better at the PR thing and maybe could have saved Garden State. Maybe there would have been a person with more experience. I doubt that, because, as I said, it was a sinking ship and there's a lot of rumors about it, and they were already starting from a low PR position. So unless you get somebody who's really, really good at PR, you're not, it's like, it's going to be a near impossible task. And unfortunately, like, for the people who are into those kind of, as I said earlier, the people who are into, fetishizing the end product are usually not the kind of people that are good at doing the thing to make that end product, right? The people who, like, go like, oh, the West, look at how cool Western civilization was with all these sculptures and art things. And it's like, yes, but you didn't create those. Somebody in the past created those. And yes, even though that one individual created those, there was thousands and thousands and thousands of people that existed at the time. And just because you can look back and say, look at this accomplishment this person did, doesn't mean that, you have that potential, but like, that potential takes a lot of sacrifice. And I think that a lot of individuals who, fetishize history in that way, where they think about the super potential and the dream, but don't understand the work that goes behind it, and the respect and dignity that is needed in order to convince people to build something great. I don't think that groups like the Raiders understand that. That's why they're called Raiders. They raid. People who raid things don't build things. They destroy things. They raid things. So don't allow yourself to be raided. Don't allow your character to be raided. Do better for yourself, and know that the furry fandom's got it. Like, they'll figure it out, and they're learning fast. Because guess what? We don't forget about it. Instead, we make forget about it, because we see that there's a problem here, and we see that that an institution is in danger. So we create competition and go, eventually forget about it. We'll replace what's seen as a poison tree. So don't allow yourself to be poisoned to save a garden that's poisoned. Instead, find a better place to plant. Anyways, thank you very much for watching. Kick that like, kick the subscribe button, kick a comment in the comment section. Thank you very much. Have a good one.